Some people walk into a room, and they want the light to hit them. They want the applause to rise, the eyes to turn, the conversation to bend like gravity in their direction. And yet, they leave that room emptier than they entered. Because while they were busy trying to be interesting, they forgot the far greater secret, the one that makes people lean in, not step back. The one that builds bonds deeper than charm, deeper than clever words, deeper than a resume of achievements. It's this: people care far less about you being interesting than about you being interested. We live in an age where everyone is broadcasting, posting, shouting, performing, trying desperately to be noticed. But the rarest soul in the crowd is the one who isn't talking to be heard, but listening to understand. The one who steps into another's world and sees it. Really sees it. Without turning the lens back to themselves. Ego is hungry. It devours moments. It hijacks conversations. It makes you rehearse your next sentence while the other person is still speaking. It turns every interaction into a silent contest for validation. But interest, true, undivided interest, is generous. It feeds the other person's dignity. It invites them to expand, to trust, to share the raw edges they don't reveal to the performance-driven crowd. Abraham Lincoln understood this. He was not the loudest man in the room. In fact, his voice was often described as high-pitched and unremarkable. But his mind, his presence, was a fortress of empathy. He listened with such sincerity that even his fiercest political rivals would leave his presence feeling heard, respected, and, strangely, willing to stand beside him. Walt Disney built an empire on imagination, yes, but also on obsession. Not with his own brilliance, but with the audience. He studied what made their eyes widen. He listened to the laughter of children and the sighs of parents. He understood that the magic wasn't in making people admire him, it was in making people feel something inside themselves. And here's the truth. The world is not waiting for you to impress it. It's waiting for you to notice it. To notice the dreams trembling beneath someone's hesitation. To notice the story in a stranger's eyes. To notice the detail in the struggle that no one else is patient enough to see. When you trade ego for interest, you stop trying to steal the spotlight. And you start becoming the light. The man who always talks about himself will never know the full wealth of humanity. The woman who listens, who asks, who draws out the best in others. She will leave every room with more than she brought in. Because the richest conversations are not currency you earn by performing. They are gifts you receive by caring. And here's the paradox. The more interested you are, the more interesting you inevitably become. Ego whispers, prove yourself. Interest whispers, discover them. One isolates you. The other connects you. The first time you truly lean into interest, you will feel the shift. It's almost physical. You stop thinking about how you're coming across. And your mind opens like a door to someone else's world. You start noticing the pauses in their sentences. The way their eyes change when they speak about a certain memory. The way their tone lifts when they speak of a hope they haven't yet dared to chase. This is not small talk. This is soul talk. And you can only enter it when your curiosity outweighs your self-consciousness. Thomas Edison, for all his genius, was not a man who thought he had all the answers. He was relentless in asking questions. When something failed, he didn't sulk in the shadow of his own importance. He investigated. He wanted to know. Not to defend his ego, but to uncover truth. That's why he could attempt and fail thousands of times in pursuit of the light bulb. Because he was more interested in the problem than in protecting his pride. Your conversations, your relationships, your career. They are all built on the same principle. If you cling to ego, you'll filter everything through the need to appear right. If you cling to interest, you'll filter everything through the desire to be real. And that desire, to be real, is magnetic. Think of the last time you met someone who really listened to you. Not nodded politely while scanning the room. Not waited impatiently for you to finish so they could insert their own story. But someone who asked, "Tell me more," and meant it. Didn't it make you feel lighter? Didn't it make you want to give more of yourself? That's the power you hold when you choose interest over ego. Henry Ford once said, "If there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle." Ford understood that machines could be engineered in a factory. But loyalty, trust, and influence could only be engineered in the human heart. And that required stepping outside your own. In a noisy world, interest is an oasis. People are starving for someone to notice them. Because so few ever do. In every conversation you have the chance to give the rarest gift a human can give. Your full, unbroken presence. No phone in your hand. No mental rehearsal of your next reply. No silent scoreboard of who's more impressive. Just you. In their world. As if nothing else exists. You'll be surprised how fast walls fall when you approach people like this. Even the coldest demeanor can melt under the warmth of genuine attention. Even the most guarded soul can open when they feel they are safe from judgment. And here's the beautiful twist. When you live with this posture, not as a tactic, but as a truth, you will find that the world starts opening to you in return. Doors you never knocked on will open. Opportunities you never chased will arrive. Because people remember the ones who made them feel seen, and they will run toward you when everyone else is running toward themselves. There is a quiet kind of power in living this way, a power that doesn't shout, doesn't demand, doesn't need to stand on a pedestal. It is the power of gravity. It pulls people toward you without them even realizing why. When you stop feeding ego, something extraordinary happens. Your presence stops being about you. It becomes a mirror for the greatness in others. And people are drawn to the places where they feel their own greatness rise. Napoleon Hill wrote that the most successful people are those who transmute the desire for self-expression into the desire to help others achieve their ambitions. In other words, they redirect the energy they once spent trying to be admired and pour it into making others feel capable, hopeful, and alive. That's not just philosophy, that's strategy. In a business meeting, ego will have you fighting to get the last word. Interest will have you asking the question that unlocks the solution no one else could see. In a friendship, ego will have you telling your story louder. Interest will have you listening until your friend tells you the story they've never told anyone before. History remembers the people who mastered this. Look at Lincoln, again. He didn't surround himself with yes men. He built what historians call his team of rivals. People who challenged him, disagreed with him, even campaigned against him. Why? Because he was interested in truth, not in flattery. Because he understood that iron sharpens iron. And that growth lives in the friction between perspectives. The ego fears being wrong. Interest fears missing the chance to learn. And here's the paradox, when you live with curiosity instead of defensiveness, you stop losing even when you lose. You walk away with insight. With deeper understanding. With new allies who respect the way you sought to understand them instead of defeating them. Think about it. When someone tries to win over you, you resist. But when someone tries to understand you, you relax. The whole tone changes. Walls drop. Dialogue opens. And progress begins. This is not weakness. This is influence. True influence is not imposed, it's invited. And you are only invited into someone's trust when they believe you are there to serve, not to steal the spotlight. Walt Disney used to spend hours walking through his parks. Not in a boardroom. Not on a stage. But in the lines, with the guests. He would kneel down and talk to children at eye level. Ask parents what they thought. Studied the faces of people as they stepped off rides. He wanted to know their world so deeply that the magic he built would feel like their magic, not his. That's the secret. When you are more interested in someone else's joy than in your own applause, your impact lasts longer than any moment of attention you could steal. The world doesn't need more people competing to be. Needs more people courageous enough to be still, to ask, to listen, and to care as if there is nothing more important in that moment than the soul in front of them. And the irony? When you live this way, you will be remembered far longer than the ones who fought for the spotlight. Ego is a sprinter, it burns bright, fast, and hot, but it cannot run a long race. Interest is a marathoner, steady, enduring, and capable of crossing distances ego never imagined. When you lead with interest, you stop chasing moments, and you start building legacies. A moment of ego might win you attention today, but a lifetime of interest will win you loyalty tomorrow, loyalty from friends, from colleagues, from strangers who feel your sincerity. There's a discipline to this, because ego is always at your shoulder, whispering, "What about me? What about my story? What about my victory?" And the discipline is in silencing that voice long enough to hear the one across from you. In your work, this discipline looks like asking the question no one bothered to ask, the one that changes the direction of a project, the one that reveals what your customer truly needs, the one that transforms a transaction into a relationship. In your relationships, it looks like pausing before you answer, not to formulate a clever comeback, but to understand what the other person actually meant. It looks like remembering the details they told you weeks ago, and bringing them up because you cared enough to remember. It's not about pretending to be interested, people can smell pretense like smoke. It's about training yourself to become interested, To treat every human being as a library filled with unwritten stories, and to walk into every interaction with the wonder of discovering a new book. Henry Ford didn't build the automobile empire by out-talking his competition. He built it by studying what people needed: faster, cheaper, more reliable transportation, and then shaping his entire vision around serving that need. He wasn't trying to get the world to admire him. He was trying to give the world something it didn't even know it could have. This shift, from self to service, is the bridge from temporary applause to permanent respect. And here's where the transformation happens. Once you taste the impact of being truly interested, you stop craving the hollow high of ego. The satisfaction of making someone feel understood is richer, warmer, and far more lasting than the fleeting rush of making them clap. But make no mistake, this is not passive. Interest requires energy. It demands focus. It calls you to be present in a way ego never will, because ego can run on autopilot, interest cannot. To live this way means walking into every room not asking, "How can I win?" but asking, "Who can I lift?" It means carrying the weight of another person's story long enough to see where it leads, to hold it with care, and to treat it as something sacred. And when you do this consistently, you become the person people call when the stakes are high, the one they trust with their dreams, because they know you won't use those dreams as props for your own performance. That is influence in its purest form. Not the influence of manipulation, but the influence of genuine human connection, the kind that shapes decisions, heals divides, and builds movements. Life will test this in you. It's easy to be interested when the conversation is pleasant, when the person in front of you is likable, when the topic feeds your own curiosity. But true mastery shows when the moment is uncomfortable, when you disagree, when the person across from you is nothing like you. Ego loves comfort, it thrives where it can feel superior. Interest thrives in the unknown, in the territory where you must suspend judgment and step into the other person's shoes even if they don't fit. Abraham Lincoln once said, "I don't like that man. I must get to know him better." Most of us would avoid the people we dislike. But Lincoln understood that dislike often comes from distance, and that closing the distance can dissolve it altogether. This is adaptability, stretching yourself beyond your preferences, learning from people you don't immediately understand, seeing value in perspectives that challenge your own. When you are more committed to understanding than to winning, you free yourself from your limits. You begin to see patterns others miss, collect truths ego would have ignored, and turn those truths into tools that set you apart. In business, adaptability means hearing criticism without hiding from it, finding opportunity and feedback instead of rejecting it because it stings. Thomas Edison, told countless times that his work was a failure, famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's the voice of someone more interested in discovery than defending pride. In life, adaptability means staying present when emotions run high, holding space for someone's frustration instead of rushing to fix it just to feel comfortable again. It's resilience too, because interest will be tested by rejection, misunderstanding, and people who give nothing back. If you expect every act of interest to be reciprocated, ego is still driving. True resilience is giving attention not for personal gain, but because it's who you've chosen to be. Here's the quiet truth most people miss: interest, when lived deeply, becomes strength. It can't be faked or stolen. It makes you unshakable in conversation, free to walk into any room, hostile or friendly, and still lead with grounded curiosity. The loudest person in the room may command the moment, but the most interested person will command the future. Because people follow the ones who understand them, not the ones who simply outshout them. And when you become that person, you're no longer just part of the noise. You are the signal in a world full of static.